In his last days, Blair Adams traveled over 5,000 kilometers, exhibited very strange behavior, and paid for a hotel room that he never even stepped foot in. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please do subscribe, and if you're old here, hello again. My name's Kate Philpott and I cover true crime and missing person cases on my channel. In today's video, we're going to be covering a Patreon requested case that is beyond strange, incredibly mysterious, and really will leave you guessing. But before we get into it, I am going to have a little bit of a chat with you. If you don't want to have a chat with me, there will be a timestamp in the description below so you can skip straight on ahead to the video. I won't be offended, but I just wanted to talk about a few little things before we get into, serious stuff. I feel like we never talk, like person to person, if you will, because I'm always talking about such serious things on this channel. It's never really the right place to start telling you about my day or whatever, but I'm going to address the fact that I've been so incredibly inconsistent with my upload days and everything. I say I'm uploading every second week, but then it'll be 2 weeks between two videos, and then it'll be 3 weeks between two videos, and then it'll be 2.5 weeks, and then I'm just thrown all over the place. And I'm gonna be totally honest with you, there's really no good reason as such as to why that is, other than the fact that I am so drained from this year. I recently went through a breakup, so there's a lot of heavy energy around that. I went through a bit of a mental health dip in the last week or two, and I think this part goes for everybody, but it is just so exhausting constantly having the pandemic looming over us. Whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, it's always just there in the back of your mind. And I'm just tired. And I know I'm not alone in that. In fact, as I'm filming this video, I'm supposed to be in work, but I can't be because I'm currently a close contact and I am just sitting and basking in this anxiety that, oh my god, I hope I didn't ruin Christmas for my whole entire family. And it's just a lot, isn't it? I don't think we've given ourselves enough credit for how much we've actually gone through collectively. But with all that stuff aside, yes, I will be taking a bit of a break over the holidays. So while it may be more than 2 weeks between this video and the next video, the plan is when my next video goes up, I will be consistently uploading every second Friday. So every second Friday at 7 p.m. GMT, there will be a new video on my channel. And that's from the next time I upload. So anyway, with all that said, I'm excited for a fresh start for sure. And I hope you get a fresh start as well. Do what you can to really enjoy these holidays. We don't always get this much time with our loved ones, and I do know that it's not always the easiest time of the year. So even if it's just in those small moments of joy, like you've got your hot cup of coffee, a Bailey's coffee, a little hot chocolate of some kind, or whatever your beverage of choice is, and you're snuggled up under a blanket, sometimes the beauty really is in just those tiny moments. So just squeeze every ounce of joy out of those moments. And I hope that your Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate are better than you expect them to be, whatever that means for you. So let's get into this video, shall we? So our victim in this case is Blair Adams, a 31-year-old from British Columbia, Canada. And the case takes place in summer of 1996. Prior to this, Blair had been described as a very positive person, very enthusiastic, and also quite hardworking. And he worked in a construction company and absolutely loved it. And you might have also noticed, I mentioned his traits as prior to the summer of 1996, because in that July, his behavior, his entire personality changed drastically. He became a completely different person. He was incredibly anxious, he was agitated, flustered, constantly paranoid, and he had terrible mood swings. His mental health had taken a dive, and in his own words, he described himself as depressed and very stressed out. And this change in behavior and state was so incredibly obvious to everybody who knew him. And when his mom asked him what was wrong, he said, "I don't think I should tell you about it." And to this day, she doesn't know what he was referring to. Leading up to his death, he wasn't getting much sleep at all, which certainly wouldn't have helped with how he was feeling as well. So this is obviously very concerning. This guy is stressed out, he's not himself at all. Something to note is he did have a past with substance abuse, but everybody who knew him said that that was well in the past. At this point, he had been sober for over 2 years, and he had recently stopped going to the AA meetings. He also had previous convictions of assault and narcotics. But again, this seemed to be a thing of the past. Alright, let's get into the timeline leading up to Blair's death. I've seen different dates, but either on the 5th or the 6th of July 1996, Blair withdrew all of his money from his savings accounts. He now had the equivalent of about $6,000 US in cash. And I say the equivalent because it was a mixture of US dollars, Canadian dollars, and German currency, and this was before the euro. Not only did he have all of this cash, but he also emptied a safety deposit box and took out all of this jewelry, gold, platinum, and so on. Thousands of dollars worth. He packed the cash into a green duffel bag, the jewelry into a black fanny pack, and then he also had another black bag for receipts and documents, things like that. So now he has all this stuff and he starts making really strange decisions. On the 8th of July, Blair tries to cross the border into the US. Well, not that that in itself is a strange decision. Well, no, naturally though, Border Patrol thought he looked pretty sketchy with all of this cash and jewelry, so he was denied access. Later that day then, he returned to the border, but again was denied access. One of these days too, he made a quick visit to his job and collected his last paycheck, but not only that, he quit his job that day. His job that he really enjoyed. So even though he was evidently trying to leave Canada, it was clear that he didn't have really any intentions of returning, at least anytime soon. However, with that said, the following day, he bought a return ticket to Frankfurt in Germany. This ticket cost him $1,600 and the flight was due to go out the following day. But Blair never made it on that plane. So why did he buy a ticket to Germany? Was this just the first flight that he could get? Probably not, because it's not like he arrived to the airport and was like, what's the first one I can get on? I mean, the flight was the following day. So that paired with the fact that he had German currency kind of seems like, yeah, he did intend to go to Germany. Interestingly, he did have some connections with Germany, so it might not be totally random. His girlfriend at the time was German, and he had also told people during this time that he was acting very strangely and everything, that he was dreading violence from some of his colleagues that had recently returned from Germany. He also had previously worked in Germany himself. So there are some connections there, but it doesn't fully explain why he's going there now. But I did mention that Blair never actually got on this plane, because instead, just a few hours later, he went back to the airport and got a refund for that ticket. And he had decided again that he wanted to go to the US. So he shows up to a friend's house, he is panicked, stressed, anxious, just all over the place, and he asks this friend to smuggle him into the US, because he was obviously having trouble getting in on his own in the previous days. But the reason he wanted to get into the US, and this is what he said, because someone's trying to kill me and I really need to get there. Okay, now this has taken an interesting turn. Is someone actually following him? Is he afraid for his life? Let's let that sit for a moment. His friend refused to smuggle him into the US because she had a child there that she didn't want to leave alone, which, you know, fair enough. In the early morning hours then the following day, the 9th of July, which is a Tuesday, Blair was spotted wandering around near the border. He actually attempted to cross the border on foot, but he had scratches all over his arms and legs. He appeared very dazed and out of it, and he also matched the description of an automobile theft suspect because a blue car had been stolen in Vancouver, I believe, the previous day, and it had been found at the border near where Blair tried to cross. Also, Blair had been seen by his friend the previous day driving a blue car, so what's going on? At the end of the day though, there wasn't enough evidence to fully connect him to it. Blair then rents a car, goes back to the US border and tries to get in again. This was a Nissan that he rented, and I know that seems like an insignificant detail, but that will come back later on in the video. Now this time, Blair made it through successfully, so he drives to Seattle and he buys a $770 one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. And this was a plane ticket. Now, the strange thing about this is that if he had just bought a return ticket, it would have cost him like $300-400. Like literally half the price, or maybe even less than half the price. But he specifically bought a one-way ticket and paid twice as much money. Literally, why would you do that and waste that $300 to $400? Anyway, he gets to Washington, D.C. and at this point he rents another car, a Toyota Camry. And instead of just driving to some hotel or something in Washington, D.C., he drives over 780 kilometers to Knoxville, Tennessee. Bit random that. So he arrives in Knoxville on the 10th of July in the early hours of the morning. Side note, he was in a minor car accident on this big long drive where he bumped into another vehicle and caused minor damage to that other vehicle. And the other driver said Blair seemed nice, but was in a hurry. Again, it just shows how flustered Blair was in this moment in time. Blair is next seen then at a gas station in Strawberry Plains, just outside of Knoxville. This is around 5:30 a.m. And here we have even more confusion from Blair. So he refueled the car and then realized that he couldn't drive away. He couldn't get the car to start. So he asked the clerk there for help, and this clerk's name was Gerald Sapp. And Blair's like, yo, I can't start the car. I will just say, after Gerald's interaction with Blair, he said that he was nuts and not all there, and also that his mind wasn't working properly for some reason. But at the same time, he didn't think he was on any substances or anything like that. So Gerald figures it out. He's like, oh, you can't start this car because you're trying to start a Toyota car with Nissan keys, and that's just not going to work. Hang on. So Blair has just driven this car from Washington, D.C., 780 kilometers away. With what key? He now only has the Nissan, which, if you'll remember, the Nissan is the key from the car that he rented that he drove from Vancouver to Seattle and abandoned in Seattle airport. How did he do this? Like, how did he get there? It doesn't make sense. Not only did he get there, but the car got there. So where are these keys? Surely they're on his person or something. Now, there have been discrepancies about this part because some sources say that he searched all around, he searched his pockets in the car, he searched everywhere he could, and he couldn't find the keys. And other sources say that he refused, like he looked for the keys, but he refused to check his pockets. So, I don't know, either way, at the end of this interaction, there still wasn't any keys. So the car got towed to a repair yard and Blair himself hitchhiked to a local hotel. And this was the Fairfield Inn. Next thing, Blair arrives at this hotel and surprise, surprise, starts acting strangely again. He seemed very anxious and agitated according to the workers there, and he exited and re-entered the hotel 5 times within the space of 1 hour without buying anything, without talking to anybody. He was just in and out and in and out, like he wasn't sure if he should stay, if he should go. After this though, he came in for the last time and he paid for a room. So it was $100 for the room, but he gave them $150 and told them to keep the change, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would love to know exactly how much the room was. Like if it was $100 on the market, then it really doesn't make sense. The only way it would make sense is if it's a little over $100, like let's say it's $108 and he only has 50s, so he gives them the 50s and says to keep the change. I mean, it's still quite a lot of extra money you're giving them, but I don't know. But the whole way throughout this process, he was antsy. He was looking behind him. He was seeing, was there somebody there? They thought that he was looking for somebody that might be following him or might be coming in behind him in the hotel or something like that. Then after paying for this room, he leaves the hotel again. He never even steps foot into the room or even tries to make his way towards it. Instead, he pays for the room and he leaves. And he leaves at 7:37 p.m. This time, he would not return. Ever. Blair's next movements are not exactly known, but he next shows up at about 7 a.m. the following morning in a construction site of an unfinished motel about half a mile away, and this is 12 hours after he walked out of the Fairfield Inn the last time. Only this time, he was dead. And the state he was found in was just really bizarre. He was naked from the waist down, with his trousers having been pulled off, as if by somebody else. He was beaten, his shirt was ripped open, his shoes were off, and his socks were inside out. And actually one of his shoes was underneath his head like a pillow. So did he put it there or did somebody else put it there? He had multiple scratches, cuts, grazes, and what appeared to be defensive wounds. So it did look like he tried to fight back. Now, what killed him in the end was a massive blow to the stomach that literally ruptured his stomach. And he was surrounded by all those belongings, the cash, the jewelry, and about 10 feet away from his body were the Toyota car keys. The ones that he had lost. The ones that he was adamant he didn't have. These keys were the whole reason the car got towed and the whole reason Blair ended up in the Fairfield Inn in the first place. Now, a security guard nearby did hear a scream at about 3:30 a.m, although he did claim that it sounded like a woman. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was a woman. I mean, if you are literally screaming for your life, who knows what kind of noises are going to come out of you. What's also pretty important to note here, the murder weapon, it was never found. So either it was destroyed or it is just sitting in somebody's kitchen, shed, car, warehouse, who knows. Blair's driver's license, passport, and credit card were scattered 100 yards away from his body. And it was described in a few articles as if they'd been thrown from a moving vehicle. Lastly, about the crime scene, there was very little forensic information, but they did discover a single strand of hair on Blair's body that was not his, and they extracted the DNA from it. But this DNA still hasn't been matched. When Blair's family were contacted, they were floored because they had no idea why he would even have left the country, why he would end up in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's a pretty random place. But, and we'll go into these theories a little bit more in a few minutes, but my interpretation is that Knoxville, Tennessee wasn't his end destination, or his intended end destination. I mean, he flew to DC, he drove to Knoxville, and the only reason he didn't drive further was because he didn't have the car keys for the car. And the car was towed and he ended up in a hotel. That to me doesn't sound like he actually was planning to go to Knoxville. He may have intended to drive for hours more, days more, weeks more even. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention before we move into the theories here is that there is a composite sketch related to this case. But there's a lot of confusion about this sketch because different sources saying different things about who the sketch was even of. Some sources say that the sketch was of a man that Blair was talking to at the Cracker Barrel, and that the sketch was based off 2 witness statements from women who had seen this conversation happen. If this is the case, this man still hasn't been identified, and I'm sure nowadays he would look quite different anyway, because this was 25 years ago. Other sources say that this sketch was of Blair himself, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because why would they need to sketch Blair? He's the victim here, and he's identified. They know who he is. They've contacted his family. Why would they need to do that? Alright, let's get into the theories. There are quite a few of them, to be honest. So the first theory is that Blair suffered some kind of mental breakdown or psychotic break. The police believe that the fear and anxiety and paranoia that Blair was experiencing was not based from something real, but something just in his mind. Maybe it was some kind of late onset schizophrenia or even delayed side effects from his previous substance abuse. But something that gets me is, if it was something that was just purely going on in his mind, how did he end up dead anyway? Especially in that manner, with half of his clothes on and things thrown all over the place and defensive wounds. Let me know what you think about that. The second theory is that he was an unfortunate victim of some kind of accident. Something that is quite interesting about this case is the cold case detective that is assigned to it believes that there was a vehicle of some sort involved. Either that Blair himself was driving a motorbike, or he was hit by a motorbike, or hit by somebody in a car, maybe even dragged along for a little bit, and that's what caused his death. Nothing's impossible, let's get that straight, but I don't know. I don't know. If we're being really honest with ourselves, doesn't it seem like a massive coincidence for someone to accidentally knock Blair down with a vehicle of some sort, considering all of Blair's really unusual behavior and activity and anxiety and paranoia, it would be awfully convenient for it to have been an accident. Now, that's not saying that just if there's a vehicle involved that it has to be an accident, but I'm just saying. Not to mention, he died from a blow to the stomach with something estimated to be like a metal bar of some kind, which is significantly smaller than a car or a motorbike even. Also, defensive wounds. How do you get defensive wounds if you die from being hit by a car? You're not defending yourself against this car. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Now, there is also the possibility that this was a spontaneous murder, that Blair was so antsy and anxious and acting so strangely that he said something maybe offensive, or he said the wrong thing to the wrong person, and that person just did something spur of the moment. It is definitely possible. With that theory, I would also question, why is there a need for him to be naked from the waist down? Things like that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. None of the theories make 100% sense, by the way. Alright, so the next theory we've got is a suicide. Now, this kind of goes along with the psychotic break, mental breakdown kind of theory. With that, you could make an argument for Blair taking his own life. However, I would struggle to believe it based on the type of injuries Blair had. For example, how do you take your own life with a fatal blow to the stomach? And why would you have defensive wounds? And even down to the smaller, finer details, how do you take your own life and then place your shoe underneath your head like a pillow? Or did you place your shoe there and lie down and take your own life? Nah, it's not adding up for me. There is another theory that is more to do with the motive, and that's that this was actually a robbery. I personally refuse to even entertain this theory. All I need to say is he was surrounded by thousands of dollars in cash and jewelry and gold. Although, the only argument I will make here is that maybe it was something more sentimental that somebody was after, and that was actually stolen from him. Maybe this was something more personal or more important, like a flash drive with really important information on it. The final theory is that Blair Adams was actually being followed by somebody. Somebody was chasing him with the desire to kill him. In which case, was the murder itself planned? Did they plan to attack him and torment him maybe for a longer, or did they just want him dead? If so, why? Why? There's just no real motive there. And a major aspect of this theory is that it was something to do with his previous related life. Did he owe somebody money that they were only now coming to get? I mean, if we look at his behavior, he was paying for things in cash, he was on the run, he only stopped and stayed in the one place because he literally couldn't start the car. The car was towed and he went off to a hotel then because he didn't have a car. Actually, I just had a thought about the keys and how they disappeared and then they showed up again. Let me know what you think about this. Maybe this whole thing with the keys was part of it. Maybe he was being followed and the person managed to sneakily grab the keys while he was in paying for the fuel. And maybe this person wanted to just totally mess with him and freak him out and make him even more paranoid, and to ensure that he wouldn't be able to go anywhere else. Then after they killed him, they returned the keys to make him look like the crazy one. Just a thought, but let me know what you think about that. It seems like something out of a movie, but this whole case seems like something out of a movie. It's so bizarre. If he was being followed, who is this person? Where are they now? It's likely that they haven't been convicted of any other crimes since then in the past 25 years or previously beforehand, because they did extract DNA from a hair found on Blair's body and there hasn't been any matches from it. Unless there was more than one person involved, that is also possible. It just me off because someone had something to do with Blair Adams' death and they haven't been held accountable for it. And that's just not good enough. Another thing about this theory, what is the motive? Is it robbery? Well, that doesn't make sense. Was it to humiliate him? I mean, he was left naked from the waist down. That's a real FU to someone. But even still, why? There must be more to that. It must be more personal if that was the case. Was the motive SA? According to forensics, there was no DNA evidence to suggest SA. However, quite a few of the investigators do think that there was something SA related. And let's be honest, you don't always necessarily have DNA when there's SA. So those are the theories in this case, and I would love to know what you think. There was a lot of questionable behavior that Blair was exhibiting. Why did he buy a ticket to Germany and then return it? Why did he buy a ticket to DC and go there but then drive 780 kilometers elsewhere? And even if Knoxville, Tennessee wasn't his intended end destination, where was he going? And why didn't he go a more direct route? And why was he going where he was going? Why pay for a night in a hotel when he had no intention of staying there? Or maybe he did have an intention of staying there, but realistically, we don't know what his time of death was. He could have walked out of that hotel and been dead half an hour later. We don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything to do with his time of death. We just know that he left at 7:37 p.m. He left the hotel and he showed up at 7 a.m. the following morning. Who knows at what point he actually died? If you want my personal opinion on this, I think Blair was actually being followed. I understand that a lot of his behavior seems just like, you can put it down to crazy or you can put it down to paranoia, anxiety, etc., etc. But he actually ended up dead. If he was being followed by somebody that wanted to kill him, which he repeatedly said that he was, that makes a lot of sense. He actually ended up dead. And not with injuries that looked self-inflicted. Yes, the theory of him being chased by someone still leaves some questions, but in my personal opinion, it leaves the least amount of questions. Like, we don't know why he was being followed, if he was being followed, but that doesn't make it something that's like, oh, that couldn't possibly be the case. You know, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I just find this stuff interesting. But again, I would love to know what you think. So comment below with your thoughts on what you actually think happened to Blair. Was he being chased? Or was it all in his head? Or was it something else? Like the robbery theory or the suicide theory and so on. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you to the patron of the channel that requested this case. Obviously, Patreon requested videos will always take higher priority, so if you'd like to do that as well, the link will be down below and I really appreciate it. And don't forget to follow on TikTok, Instagram and Twitter. They are all KatePhilpott_YT. And listen, I hope you have a very happy Christmas and a very happy new year, and I hope it is, like I said, I hope your holiday season is better than you expect it to be, whatever that means for you. So thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment down below, you know, all that good stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!